Ever notice how TV commercials for big banks go really hard on the schmaltz? Loving families, cute babies, sweet old retired people, micro pigs on leashes. It's almost as if they're trying to distract us from something.
Oh, you mean like how in 2016, Wells Fargo admitted to creating 3.5 million fake accounts for customers to collect extra fees and charged over 570,000 people for auto insurance they didn't need, resulting in over 20,000 customers going into default?
And then there's the now infamous practices of Citibank, Lehman Brothers, AIG, and other Wall Street giants of bundling toxic junk assets and repackaging them as AAA super safe investments, which led to a near collapse of the international money system that ordinary people are still hurting from.
And most Americans feel that big banks are rewarded rather than punished for risky and predatory behavior. Bank of America received tens of billions in bailout funds in 2009, only to turn around the very next year and pay $35 billion in executive bonuses.
Not surprisingly, our trust in these institutions is low. A recent Gallup poll showed that only 27% of Americans have confidence in banks. But this is not a new phenomenon. 14th century poet Dante placed moneylenders in the seventh circle of hell, below violent murderers and blasphemers.
So, being suspicious of big banks is nothing new, but what can you do? You've got to stash your cash somewhere. And who can get through life without ever taking a loan or using a credit card?
Thankfully, you do have options. Alternatives to big banks have been around for a while, and if you haven't looked into them yet, it might be time.
They're going to be talking about credit unions here as an alternative. I've heard of these terms used. I'm actually not sure what the larger distinction is. I've always considered them just as a different name for a bank, but obviously there must be some difference here. But totally agreed. I think you should be using a bank if you aren't already of some sort. Basically, you can get your money insured, like with the FDIC, up to $250K, I think, per insurer at an institution. So that means like it's much better than having it in like your mattress, for instance, because if your mattress catches on fire or gets wet or something, your house burns down, there's a flood, whatever natural disasters can occur, that money is gone. You don't get anything for that. But if the money is stored at a bank and that bank gets flooded or gets burned down, then you do get that money back. So it's still a necessary evil, but I do think it was valid for them to call out some of those odd practices that banks have generally gone through in the past, since they get so much of this money and they have so much control over how things are done, and they do seem to get disproportionate amount of benefits from the government at this point in time.
One good alternative is a local community bank. Their fees and charges can be lower than national chains, and you can be pretty sure they won't use your money for risky bets or Wall Street gambles. Instead, they tend to make investments in the immediate region, helping to develop projects and businesses that create jobs and improve spaces in your hometown. There are over 52,000 community bank locations nationwide, and you can find ones in your area by checking out the ICBA's website.
Then there are banks that don't rely on physical locations. Online banks like Simple and Chime usually have lower fees, partly due to having no brick and mortar expenses. They also tend to have no account minimums, don't charge overdraft fees, and ATMs are fee-free at tens of thousands of locations.
Agreed. I use an online bank for most of my banking needs. I would highly recommend them. They usually also have user-friendly apps, things like that, that help you when you use it. I don't use that much physical cash myself nowadays. I would definitely recommend that over like one of those big companies like Bank of America, etc., who usually give you basically no interest. They charge you so many fees for so many things that they're just like price gouging you, and then expecting you to be happy with the pleasure of them doing so. Definitely recommend online banks. I think I've used the community bank once. It was fine, but I found that definitely a lot of their systems were older. And so I did run into like a couple issues where like, I don't know, maybe like some paperwork didn't get finalized and like passed around properly. But there was definitely a lot of stuff still happening on like pen and paper instead of through like apps or systems of some sort. But that is a nice benefit of them being community-based, that they do help the community.
Both local banks and online-based banks still typically offer FDIC protection on up to $250,000 worth of deposits per person and account type. So for most people, they are just as secure as the big national chains.
You could also choose to ditch banks altogether and open up an account at a credit union. Credit unions allow you to make deposits and withdrawals, take out loans and credit cards, and enjoy most other services you might expect from a bank. But unlike banks, credit unions are all non-profit entities. Any profits made by the credit union are returned to you in the form of reduced fees, higher savings rates, and better loan terms.
That's actually very cool. I didn't realize that was the difference. I guess that makes sense, since a for-profit company and a not-for-profit company would theoretically have different names. That's very interesting to know, because I've interacted with a few credit unions in the past, but I never realized that was the stipulation and the difference there.
This is because credit unions technically don't have customers. They have members. Everyone who keeps their money at a credit union is seen as a part owner of the institution, and they usually all share a common bond. Perhaps they all live in a particular geographic location, work in the same industry, or are all alumni of the same university. One member's deposits end up becoming an auto or business loan for another member. Teamwork.
Credit unions offer FDIC-like protection through the NCUSIF, and most credit unions are part of a national shared branch network, which allows you to utilize thousands of other credit unions, just like they were your own. So depending on your credit union, you could have access to even more ATMs and branches than with a big national bank.
Maybe this all sounds great to you and you're ready to say sayonara to your big bank, but there are a few drawbacks to consider before making the switch.
Because of their size and scope, big banks are better at international banking and lending. Making a withdrawal from abroad or getting a loan in another country can be a tall order for many local banks and credit unions. So if you do a lot of traveling or have a cross-border business, sticking with your big bank might make your life easier.
Also, smaller banks and credit unions usually can't compete with the big banks' digital offerings. So if things like banking apps, budgeting software, and online accounting tools are important to you, be sure to inquire about the technological support they offer.
Even though these advantages come from big banks' huge size, in their ads they often go out of their way to portray themselves as homey, familiar, even rustic. It's as if they're saying little organizations are more trustworthy.
So if you find these commercials persuasive, maybe you should check out the smaller organizations in your neighborhood.
And that's our 2 cents.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.